Hey everybody, welcome to What the Tech. I'm Andrew Zarian. Of course, I'm joined by my tag team partner, as always, Paul Thurrott. How you doing, Paul?
Good evening.
How are you doing? You're a little frazzled today.
I am a little frazzled.
What's going on?
I don't know. Microsoft just updated the Xbox Music app on Android, which is an event that should impact a total of about 17 people, but for some reason this is a big deal for me, so...
I was really frazzled last week, and people were asking me if I was on something at the end of the show. I got a bunch of emails. They're like, were you okay? Did you take, like, a Valium or something? Like, you were, like, off. I'm like, you know, that's what happens when you get stranded in Mexico for 2 days.
Yeah, actually, to be honest, given what happened to you, I can't believe you were even on the show, and, you know...
Functioning.
We're coherent. I was going to say coherence, but, you know...
You know what it was? And a lot of people send me messages saying that they got stuck also. And it was almost like it became like a support group with the emails that came in because of the show. And everybody was saying, like, it's the emotional impact of not having control. Because we become a society that we control every aspect, right? Like, we could leave our house, go all the way to the other end of the country, and be able to control the heat in our house.
I know.
You know, with home automation. Like, we could turn the lights on. We could... peek in and see what's happening in your home. And I think the fact that I had no control over the situation and that I was still kind of disconnected even though I had internet, it really screws with you. It really affects you. We forget how reliant we are on all these things.
Right.
So I was totally off. And this week, you know, I'm doing great. I'm back to normal. Now Paul is having a whole thing happen.
It's just having what I would call a normal day, I think is the way to say it. It's just the way it is.
Well, you had a busy couple days.
Yep.
I was on. I saw Mary Jo posted. I actually, it's weird. This is the first time this has happened. I always check up on WinSuperSite to see what's happening, and I saw the article that Mary Jo posted about WinSuperSite about the next version of Windows, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't see it on Paul's site, and it says Windows Insider, Paul Thurrott, you know, and then I read it. This is a big story.
Yeah. I probably should have anticipated.
Did you not anticipate that it was going to become a big thing?
I did. Yeah, I don't really.
So for people who don't know what we're talking about, I'm sure most of you do if you're watching the show, there was a lot of information that has come out about Windows 9, which is, you know, the codename Threshold. You kind of confirmed that as of right now, it will be called Windows 9. Mm-hmm. It's going to be shipping April 2015. So this is a big update. We're not talking about, you know, the yearly update.
Right. I mean, I would say up until just a few days ago, I was a little shaky on whether Microsoft would implement certain things at certain times, whether, you know, we would see an 8.2, an 8.3, you know, that kind of thing. So it seems like it's kind of starting to come together. So some of this information didn't so much confirm things I thought previously as, you know, was in fact new information.
So I have a couple questions for you that people have sent me. And if you could answer them, you know, sure. If you can't, you can't. Are we going to see an 8.2 this year?
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, are they going to do like 8.1.1, 8.1.2?
Well, yeah. So we know that... this is confusing because these things aren't aligned. And so one of the things that we knew previously about Threshold, which we now have to sort of recast in the light of the timing of it and what they're going to call it and everything, is that Microsoft has been working to more closely align its desktop or client platforms. Windows 8, Windows 8X, Windows RT, Windows Phone 8. And so there are two things that are going to happen at roughly the same time, meaning by the very beginning of April by build, which is Microsoft will deliver the first update, major update, I guess, within the confines of what these things are, for Windows 8.1, which they're calling Windows 8.1 Update 1, which is the same naming convention they use for updates on Windows Phone. And they're also going to deliver Windows Phone 8.1 because, you know, the current version is Windows 8, Windows Phone 8. So what I've been told is that part of the point of these releases is to align those two platforms. Actually, there are 3 platforms.
The small releases.
Yeah. Well, Windows Phone 8.1 conceivably isn't that small of a release, but
no, but on the PC side,
yeah,
like 8.1, it's not this crazy big thing. But now, I mean, if you look at it, 8.1 was probably a major update because it fixed so many things.
Right. Windows 8.1 is a big deal, I think. And one of the, it's interesting. This is not related to what we were just talking about per se, but one of the interesting things I've gotten from readers, and I've seen this on Twitter as well, is people have said, "Wow, you're really negative about Windows 8 in this article. Has your opinion changed about this or something?" And my opinion about Windows 8 has never changed, and my opinion about Windows 8.1 is not changed. This is what I was trying to do in this article is communicate what Microsoft thinks about these releases internally. That there's been kind of an about face internally where they're kind of admitting to themselves that this thing didn't solve the problems they wanted to solve. It wasn't the success they wanted it to be. And they need to do things differently because people have really complained about it.
But internally, are they saying like, okay, you know what? Maybe this wasn't the right move to do this, or it wasn't the right move to do that?
I haven't heard that. I mean, I think it's not hugely possible for Microsoft as an organization to say something like that, right? I mean, that's something that might have to come from the CEO. You could look back later and say, well, maybe we shouldn't have done it that way. Windows as an organization will tell you that they're always listening to user feedback and responding to it, and that things change over time, and that's a fair assessment as well. So the other thing that I would note is that the people running Windows are not the people who were running Windows when Windows 8 came to be.
Yeah.
And so all you need to know that there's been a strategy change isn't that they're working on Windows 9 or that they're changing some things. They got rid of the people that were responsible for Windows, all of them. So,
I mean, that speaks volumes, right? I mean,
that's all you need to know about it. I mean, so we can kind of read into it all we want, and we can try to put words in people's mouths and all that kind of stuff. But the point is, the people who made Windows 8 happen are gone. And so I think that's the important thing. I think that says what we need to say.
So Windows 9 is scheduled for an April 2015, which is weird, right? I mean, that's not generally when they release Windows.
No, and I'm so glad they're doing that because this late in the year thing has been a screwed up release schedule for a long, long time. And putting something out before the middle of the year enables PC makers and device makers now to get this product into hardware that they'll sell for back to school, that they'll sell for the holiday season. And they always blew this. You could go into Best Buy right now, buy a Windows laptop or a tablet or whatever, and the chances are pretty good it will have Windows 8 on it, not Windows 8.1. And that's
awful. I mean,
wrong. It's just crazy.
I mean, even forget about the OS, but when Windows 8 came out, but the hardware had not caught up. So the hardware that this operating system was on was not the best for it. I mean, we're talking about a lot of them didn't have the touch screen. A lot of them still didn't have all the gesturing on their trackpads that they were supposed to. The experience was awful. And you know what? That attributes to part of the I hate Windows 8 mentality that's out there. Of course you're going to hate Windows 8 if this hardware is not compatible to what it's supposed to
be. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I wonder sometimes how this gets fixed regardless, but I do this on my own laptop. I mean, there's something about the Windows 8 controls that make you want to, touch the screen. I don't own a touchscreen Windows laptop, but I still find myself trying to, press the screen.
I was looking at Jess's laptop the other day. She has a MacBook, and I was just cleaning up, the bedroom, and I look at her laptop, and there are like fingerprints everywhere. I'm like, what are you doing? She's like, what's really funny at work? The laptop that they gave me is a touchscreen Windows 8 laptop. So by default, like I'm just going to click on stuff on the screen. I'm like, this is awful. Why would anyone want to touch the screen? But I guess people do. They like it.
I'm telling you, you get used to it and you expect it, and it's fine.
So with Build coming up in the next couple months, this is going to be a big one, obviously.
Well, they're all big ones, in a way. I mean, this one's going to be big for a couple of reasons. One is they're going to lay out the vision of this Windows 9 thing, Threshold.
Which you said that they have not really done that since Longhorn, right?
Yeah, I don't want to read too much into what I was told. The way this was described to me is they're going to do something they never did during the Steven Sinofsky reign, which is provide a vision for the future. This is something that Microsoft used to do before. Well, I should say Windows used to do before. Microsoft as an organization, or as a wider organization, has done outside of Windows as well.
Are we talking a vision of the next, decade of Windows, or are we talking like...
I didn't hear that. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the Sinofsky stuff was sort of a reaction to the problems of the past before it. And so one of the problems of the past was that the Microsoft before that promised too much and then wasn't able to deliver on it. And so they wanted to step back, and they went, I think, too far in the opposite direction. And their whole deal was, we're never going to say anything about what we're doing until we're positive we can deliver it. And what that meant in effect was that they didn't really talk too much about what they were doing. And when they did, it was very close to the time they were going to release it. And, I said this all the time during these, 5-6 years, whatever it was, that there's got to be a happy middle ground, between here's what it looks like when we're going to be driving around in flying cars, and here's what we're actually going to deliver. I mean, I think there's got to be something in the middle. And so I'm sort of projecting a little bit here, but I'm sure what they're going to do is kind of split the middle, not do a Longhorn and then promise all the stuff they can't deliver, but also not be as secretive as say the Windows org was over the past 5-6 years.
If the viewers want to kind of follow along with this, or if they have not read Paul's article on WinSuperSite, definitely go check it out. It's on the front page right there. Threshold could be called Windows 9 is in the title, and you go into detail about the things that you've kind of found out about the next version of Windows. Metro 2.0 is something that you bring up, a matured version of Metro.
Yeah.
Does this also include the Metro on the desktop thing that we've been hearing about?
So I didn't have that discussion. I mean, I'd previously written that Metro will be made to work on the desktop. I would assume that's part of the 2.0 thing. In other words, that there was kind of a hardline view with the original version of this Metro user experience, and how it would integrate with the desktop. And no one liked it. I think it's fair to say universally loathed. We know that Metro is coming as floating windows, on the desktop. So yes, I would assume that's part of it.
Have they given up on since we're talking about vision kind of Microsoft, have they given up on that vision where Metro is the future of Windows? This is it. This is what Windows will become.
No, I don't know. That I don't know. I mean,
because I'm hoping they do.
I'm okay. So that's a double-edged sword, right? One of the we had this conversation, not with you and I, but I had this conversation on Twitter with some other folks today. One of the problems with Windows, or actually not Windows so much as Microsoft, is that they've had a hard time getting developers to rally around some standard. They did Win32 for so many years as kind of the programming APIs for Windows. In fact, it's still what you have to use today for the desktop. They did C++ classes, they did .NET, they did Silverlight, they did WPF, they did WinRT, Windows Runtime, Windows PRT, which is kind of a subset of that. And what if they just get rid of that? How awful would that be, right? I mean, you want to do something that can move developers along, leverage existing skills, that kind of thing. You can at least make the argument that a lot of the stuff I just said does, provided that sort of ability. But I don't know, they just keep changing things semi-arbitrarily. If they created this app store and they created this framework and 100,000 apps were released and then they just stepped away from it, that would be a disaster.
I don't see them stepping away from it, but the biggest thing that I'm surprised about, and I don't know if you agree with me on this, but the openness to the developer has not been there. And that's kind of what they encourage, and that's kind of what they had.
Openness.
For example, with the Xbox One, they really have not clearly said what kind of applications will be allowed. They've said independent game developers are welcome. By the way,
all right, so I should say, you mentioned that build was going to be a big deal, and I said there were two parts to that. The first part is obviously the threshold vision stuff, which we just kind of talked about. But the part we kind of ignored was that the actual focus of the show, the reason developers will want to be there and attend the sessions and learn about things, is Windows Phone and Xbox. And so no, they have not done a good job of explaining the Xbox stuff yet. But the Xbox just launched. I mean, even though a couple of million people already own the thing, it's not a gigantic audience yet. I mean, I think this is a much bigger year for the Xbox One. And so we will learn that at Build as well. So I wouldn't feel too negative about that stuff. I mean, we'll see. I have a feeling, and I don't know anything about this, but I would imagine that whatever initial Xbox One APIs are released will be very similar to what you see in Windows Phone and Windows 8, /RT/whatever. And that as we get into the threshold world, these things come of age together. They're made to be more similar. And that will be a big deal for developers. So again, I'm projecting here, but that's how I sort of see it happening.
What do you see? Has there been any kind of information as far as UI tweaks? Any improvements to desktop? I know that this Metro within floating Metro within desktop is something that's going to happen, but are we going to see any kind of UI enhancements to desktop, because desktop has virtually been untouched?
Right. I didn't discuss that with anybody, so I don't know.
Paul, find that article from your site.
It was a very quick thing, and I was kind of blown away by just the big stuff. You kind of lose your head a little bit, like. It was kind of a big deal, obviously.
They even spoke about this. I mean, yeah. I'm actually kind of surprised that this is a major release now. If they're projecting to April 2015, and they're saying, okay, Build is probably going to get the beta, right? That's how it's going to start, and release Canada come a couple months later.
So actually, Build. You mean for Threshold?
Yeah.
No, so actually, there won't be any bits at Build. So there won't be any beta. This is literally just Vision. So. There will be developer stuff related to Windows Phone 8.1, related to Windows 8.1/Update 1.
When do you anticipate that the beta is going to be put out there?
Well, if you think that there's a 1-year time period between the announcement and the release, and not a 1 year. I mean, this thing's been in the planning stages since last fall, so it's not like they haven't thought about it, but actual development is about a year. I mean, I would be surprised if the beta was sooner than this coming fall. If you think maybe 6 months, maybe from time of inception to the first beta. I expect it to be beta release candidate RTM, and I was told explicitly that there would be 3 milestones. In the old days, there used to be many milestones. They would do like what they called M1, M2, M3, and then a beta.
Release candidate 1, release candidate 2.
And they don't do that anymore. And of course, when you think about 1 year, a lot of people have written into me and said, 1 year doesn't seem like a lot of time. Microsoft was talking last fall about how Windows 8.1 kind of shows you what they can accomplish in 1 year. I actually think this release is going to be. I think it's going to be bigger than people even anticipate. I think it's going to be a big deal. I think 1 year is going to be just fine for this.
Where do you think, as far as the operating systems go, Apple's giving theirs away? Obviously, they don't. It's not a comparison, right? You can't compare what Microsoft is doing because Microsoft has enterprise. I
don't think Microsoft's doing the right thing.
You don't think they're doing the right thing
as far as how they handle distributing it and so forth. Apple's not really giving anything away. I mean, you're paying for it, to buy a Macintosh.
But I mean, right now, you can't decide that you're going to upgrade to Mountain Lion. That doesn't happen. If you have to upgrade to the latest version, and they're giving it to you for free, and that's the sacrifice, right? They're giving it to you, so you're taking what they're given. But with theirs,
I like that, by the way. I think it's smart. I mean,
for their business model, absolutely. Because first of all, they weren't making money off that OS. I don't think they were making money from selling that operating system in the store.
It was just like selling those apps. What's the point?
And if they were, they would have been still selling
more
them.
To make the packaging. It's like, just give it away and we'll save some money.
But they're doing something totally different, and I feel like the last year we have seen a distinct difference between the OS side on the Apple side and what Microsoft is doing. And I see this as a way of Microsoft saying, okay, well, you can't really do that with a major change like this, right? Could you have imagined if Microsoft kind of forced you into getting into getting 8? It wouldn't have happened.
Right. Windows 8's free.
Yeah.
Right.
Here you go.
Now you get a bunch of people. You have a billion plus people who have non-touch computers compelled to get this new version of Windows because it's free. That could actually be a disaster in its own right. Microsoft doesn't control the PC hardware ecosystem like Apple does on the Mac side. So the kinds of problems that there would be, could be.
But fundamentally, I mean, they're two different things. But I think Microsoft could approach it a little different than they've been doing it over the last 2 years, and kind of ease on these like forced changes that you must follow. You have to, you're stuck using Metro. You buy a Windows 8 laptop.
Forced changes is a tough term because it makes it sound bad. Whereas free update. So, I mean, I think it depends on how you're.
I'm going based on the consumer. The consumer doesn't go. I mean, whoever goes and buys a laptop, they don't understand what Windows 8 is.
The problem is that Windows is ancient, right? And Mac OS 10 is ancient too. I mean, it's not like you install something in the background and wake up and everything's working great. You have to kind of babysit the thing, and you answer questions and you do things. It's not like updating an app where the thing flashes, it's just replaced. Windows is just it's legacy code. There's a lot of stuff going on there. I think the questions here are around the decision to integrate like this mobile environment with the desktop environment. Was that a good strategy or not? That's one we're going to debate for some time to come. I mean,
what do you think? I mean, in hindsight now, do you think it was a good strategy for them?
It's not fair to. It's not fair to judge, right? So, I think from a technical perspective, from a sort of user experience perspective, it was a mistake. I could make the argument that these systems being separate would result in sort of purer, better systems, separately, technically, user experience-wise, and so forth. But the flip side to it is, if they didn't integrate them, no one would have bought this tablet thing. Nobody was buying Windows Phone either. I mean, so we have a bigger version of Windows Phone that's on a tablet that nobody wants. I mean, what's the incentive? I think the hole that Microsoft found itself in was that in order to drive adoption of this new platform, they had to integrate it with the existing version of Windows, and they create this kind of Frankenstein's monster thing. So it's so easy to judge, It's easy for me to say, from my, look, I would have bought one of the tablets anyway. I'd rather have the tablet that was separate, and I'd rather have the computer that was separate. But I would have been one of 13 people using that tablet, and it would have withered on the vine. And so, they have to make they don't make the decisions in isolation. I mean, you have to.
But do you think that argument exists with the RT side of things? I mean, I understand having it integrated on the Windows, full-blown Windows 8 on a tablet, but on the RT side, does it exist to say, okay, well, they wouldn't have bought it if we didn't integrate it?
You need to understand that the version of RT that ships, I guess, April next year, let's say, is not going to resemble the version of RT that shipped in late 2012. This will be the version that doesn't have the desktop. This will be the version that probably has native Windows Phone app running capabilities, right? It's going to be the system they wanted, the reason they've been doing this, the point they've been pushing towards. But they had to come to market with something in 2012. Actually, it's not necessarily true that they had to come to market with an RT device, but they did. So, the RT, the original release 8.0, 8.1 are somewhat constrained by the fact that there's a desktop environment, and it makes it seem like something that it isn't. And there's no version of Office available. And so, do you hold this thing off for 2.5 years, or do you release it the way it is? They released it.
You kind of have to. You kind of have to release it the way it is at that point.
Yeah, I mean, they talked about how they were developing Windows on ARM, pretty early on, but I'm not sure anyone ever understood what it was. They would do these demos. They'd be like, "Look, here's an ARM-based version of Word, and look, it's printing." That's something you can't really do at the time. Say with an iPad, you can't print. And we're going to be able to print because we're Windows. And I guess that's exciting or interesting. I mean, I think people are like, "Oh, it's weird," but you don't really understand what it means. But when the ARM device doesn't run any application that you already own, it's less exciting to people who are used to the Windows desktop stuff.
I think this is all exciting stuff. I mean, really, we're starting to see the future of what computing will be. And I think the next version of Windows will be a definitive answer of the direction that we're going. I think Windows 8 was almost like a projection of where we're going to go, and then they realized, well, this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen, so let's kind of correct that. But Windows 9, and that's something that you said from the beginning, Paul. I mean, I remember listening to it on this show, and you've said on Windows Weekly, where Windows 8 will kind of be the future. If it's successful, it's going to determine what Windows 9 will be.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious to see some stuff. You know, I one of the conversations I had, you asked me about the desktop, and I don't know anything about that, but why can't the desktop evolve? You know, why can't desktop apps be, updated to work in some kind of a full screen mode and work more like touch apps, that kind of thing. The problem is this stuff is just imploding, and, people that are, kind of dedicated to the desktop. It's like, gamers who prefer to use the PC. It's like this weird little subset. It's like they're losing sight of the fact that nothing interesting has happened on the desktop in years and years and years. And, this weekend I did some PC reinstalls. I did my non-touch Ultrabook, The truth is, like, the number of apps I have to install to kind of get up and running is like 5.
Yeah.
It's not.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm looking right now on my Mac. I have a Twitter client. I got Office. I have an IRC client, which nobody's going to use, really. And that's really it. I don't really have anything else on here.
Yeah. I mean, I could get away with web apps with a lot of the stuff that I do, but I mean, obviously I use the Office stuff. I use Photoshop, which is kind of weird. Like I don't actually think that's a mainstream app. But I do web graphics, for my site and so forth. And so I need Photoshop. But basically, it's just a couple of utilities. A Twitter app, I use Skype. I use like Photo Gallery to import from cameras and stuff. But
you brought up something really interesting here, because it really shows you. I mean, we've always discussed the difference between using a tablet and difference between using a PC, and the disconnect for a lot of people. Why are some people able to use an iPad and they totally get it, but you put a laptop in front of them and they're trying to delete, system files. I mean, really, it's like they lose their minds. But even the way that we behave on a phone, right? Like I have tons of applications installed on this thing. I have tons of applications installed on my iPad because I go and I try them. Why don't we do that on the PC? Is that the disconnect?
There are many, many reasons. So, A, they don't exist. B, they're not, tablets and smartphones are very personal. You touch them, you hold them close to you, and you carry this thing around with you, and you touch the screen. They're frictionless. I mean, it's very easy. You could, in the old days, you used to spend time reading like the comics or browsing like a newspaper or magazine. Now you can waste time just looking at apps in a store. It's no big deal to try them or to get the free ones. Install them. You forget they're there. It's no big deal if you don't want them. You uninstall them. You don't have to worry about them littering your computer with garbage like they do on a Windows PC.
But I mean, Apple's trying that with the App Store on the Mac, and
right.
People, I don't see my.
Nobody uses the App Store.
No, I'm not going on there saying like, let's see what's in the top 10 this week. I'm looking at it right now. Let me.
So why doesn't it work? Because for the same reason. Because the Mac is a personal computer, and it's not something you touch. It's not something you care about or carry around. It's ultimately just a productivity device. I mean, the same problems that the PC faces absolutely exist in the Mac. You just pay more for the privilege. It's exactly the same.
It's interesting. I mean, just the way that we use these devices in reality is totally different. We use a PC totally different than we would with a tablet.
You know what it was? I mean, 3-4 years ago, 10 years ago, obviously, if you wanted to do anything, you did, technology related, you did it on a PC. If you wanted to play video games, PC. If you wanted to get on something like a Facebook or whatever we had at the time, MySpace, AOL, PC. If you wanted to read news, PC. Like this stuff was just PC. And when you make a lot of that stuff easier, if it's like email, browsing the web, seeing what's going on Facebook or news, even things you could, and then you push beyond that into sort of pseudo productivity scenarios. Like I want to download pictures from my camera, which you don't even have to do anymore, right? These things just connect automatically to the web.
Yeah.
The PC becomes less and less relevant. And the side effect of it is the device you're using is also simpler. And so in the past, think about the weird form of abuse it would be for someone to give their parents or help their parents buy a PC, set them up with it, have to do constant troubleshooting for them because nothing ever worked correctly. And the weird relationship you get into with a computer because of how awful it is compared to these simpler devices.
I mean, just even like the simple thing of transferring photos, right?
Yeah.
I mean, think about how complicated that is for a lot of people. You got to connect it. Either it's going to, some pop-up's going to come up where it's some proprietary software that's going to download them.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then where's it putting it? What do you do after that?
Right. So the one thing I keep telling people about cloud computing, and you can say this for anything. You could be someone like we've talked a lot about ripping music from CDs and managing a collection and all the metadata crap that you do and all the stupid time you spend, managing this thing. And now cloud services appear, and I'm going to copy it up to Apple. I'm going to copy it up to Google. I'm going to copy it up to Amazon. All this stupid stuff you do. Ultimately, the biggest difference between the old way of doing things and the cloud computing way of doing things, whether you're talking about music or documents or whatever, is learning to let go. That these weird things, these kind of compulsive behaviors that we built up because computers were so unreliable that we had to back everything up all the time. We had to run ScanDisk every night. We had to run disk defrag every night. We had to make sure the drive was connected so we were getting our backups. Make sure the backups are correct. All that crap. It all kind of goes away. And the problem for people who have grown up in that era, people like you and me and a lot of older people, is that that's the world they know. And we're so compulsive.
Paul, I did MS Config today, and I went and I looked at what's starting up.
Are you serious?
I swear to you.
Tell me you're kidding.
I know. I swear to you. I went to MS Config. I looked at what's starting up. I checked some stuff off because I had 71 stuff running in the background, and I hate being above 70. And I turned off like 10 applications running in the background.
Oh my God!
I just did that before the show.
I
cannot.
I'm going to write. I meant to write about this today. In fact, well, I'm probably not
about my mental issue, but
no, not about your mental issue. No, I wiped out my Ultrabook over the weekend, and I also helped a friend get the final version of Windows 8.1 going on his Surface. And I had some interesting issues with both of these things, and they reminded me of this stuff that we're talking about now, how terrible PCs can be. And I just think that there's always going to be a place for a PC that we need it. I at least in my case, it's not inconceivable.
In the traditional sense of what a PC is.
Yeah. Okay. If you're someone who's crunching numbers in Excel, certainly if you're doing video work, obviously, if you're doing any kind of productivity task, the PC still has a reason to exist. It's still better, if you will, despite its other issues, its legacy issues, than a tablet or a phone, that kind of thing. But we also need to acknowledge that for most common kind of computing tasks, personal computing tasks, these other devices are better. And the amount of time we need to spend using a PC just kind of goes down as a result. I think about the trips I used to go on for work, about all the amount of content and crap I would copy, not just to the device, but to backup, disks or USB hard drives, movies, like music collections, my backup data, all this crap. Everything I do now is in SkyDrive and SkyDrive Pro, depending on what it is.
It's automatically there.
I can get Office in minutes. Just, I could use any computer, sign in, and have my stuff in minutes. My music is in the cloud. My documents are in the cloud. Everything I need is in the cloud, and I can get to it from anywhere. It's such a better system.
I mean, we also talk about the concept of formatting, right? That doesn't exist on a tablet. Nobody blows away the tablet. I mean, you can, really, but how often are people saying, like, oh, well, my phone's acting up a little bit. Let me just do a factory reset on this thing.
By the way, here's, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I want to just not forget this.
Please, Paul, interrupt as much as you want. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. You'll enjoy this, though. Android is the most popular mobile platform in the world, right? We have all these reasons why we think that's true. It's free, for example. Everyone always says that it's free. All these companies make these devices, and it's something to that. But when you think about why people might graduate to Android from Windows, it's because it gives you that same level of compulsion if you want it.
You could tweak it, you could hack it,
yep. You can spend they have their version of an MS config file that you can screw with if you want. You can root it. You can do all this crazy crap to it.
You could overclock it. You could overclock the phone.
And I think that's the kind of thing a certain segment of the population just gravitates to. That it's like a way to continue this abusive relationship that we have with technology, and stop using it as a means to an end, and treat it like it is the end. The point isn't I'm using a PC to write a document in Word. The point is I'm using a PC. Let's screw with the PC. Let's make it run a millisecond faster. Or I'm going to put an SSD in it so it boots a little faster or does whatever it does. It's all so stupid ultimately. This stuff that we do with computers.
Well, because it's still for many people it's become an appliance. Like an iPad is an appliance, but for a lot of people, we don't want to let go of it being this crazy thing to run and it to become an appliance.
Right.
There's always going to be people that want manual, Paul.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But you're talking about a manual transmission in a car?
Yes.
So
not the books.
Unfortunately, yes. I mean, look, there are people who like BMWs because they like to drive, or whatever. Some people just want to get there. But honestly, the PC is not about a manual transmission. It's about being able to rip out an engine and build it back from scratch. I think
perfect example.
That's a much smaller audience,
But a perfect example, Paul.
Auto mechanics.
I have a friend. He just bought a brand new Camaro, and I asked him why he got it. He goes, well, if I wanted to, I know that I could change the exhaust system and change the heads on it and get like 40 horsepower. I'm like, I understand that, but why would you want to?
It's like why do you run Linux? Because if I wanted to.
Yeah, but nobody's doing that.
Source code.
People aren't taking BMWs and tearing some people are, I'm sure, but the majority of BMW owners are not tearing apart the exhaust system and putting new heads on there. And, it's not, not like that.
No, and I think that's what I mean. In other words, like, you can make an argument that like a Mac is like a BMW or something, and a PC is like any other car, normal car.
Yeah, listen, I relate to both sides. I have a transmission to a '79 Camaro sitting in my garage. I'm not even making a joke. Like I honestly have a transmission to a '79 Camaro in my garage somewhere.
We're never going to get this car analogy right. Let me just say this. So I think the problem with the PC is that it never evolved past the point where the car did evolve past, which was in the early days when you owned a car, you had to know how to be a mechanic because these things were so unreliable that you had to know how to fix it all the time. PCs are still like that. And so here it is, like the technological device of the century, and it's still completely broken. And so I think the fundamental, innovation of a tablet or if you're a smartphone even is not, look, you can touch it, or look, you can run apps on it, or, yada, yada, yada. It's not that. It's just the simplicity of it. It's the underlying garbage is gone. The problem that Microsoft faces with Windows is that they're still building this thing on top of Windows.
Yeah.
It's like this ancient part of the PC world that is just it's just not keeping up with the times. And so, there have been these attempts over the years. Netscape tried to do it with the web. Linux tried to do it with the netbook. Chrome is trying it again with the web, I guess, with the Chromebooks and so forth. To replace this kind of teetering, but highly productive and workable thing, but really complex thing, with something simpler, and it never really.
Do you think it's possible on a desktop, in a desktop environment, in a PC environment? Is it ever going to be possible to kind of bridge that gap between a tablet, make it a little bit simpler than it is now?
Well, I think I'm not sure if you're approaching it from the tablet or the PC side. I think that the fundamental break that needs to occur is that the tablet stuff evolves to the point where it could do some of the more complex stuff. Maybe not 100%, but, for example, it's probably going to be a while before you can edit a video on iOS to the extent that you can in, say, something like Premiere Elements. Obviously, you can do simple editing on iOS or on the web too. It's the stuff is just there, but it's not going to be that much more time before the basic productivity stuff, word processing, spreadsheets, basic editing, photo editing, all that kind of stuff can happen on any of these devices. In fact, you could make the argument we're already there. So it's interesting. I talk about Chrome OS and Chromebooks. what puts those things over the top? Full offline support, better and more apps. It's not hard to understand how they get there. What puts iOS over the top, or Android-based tablets? More mature productivity apps that work at better and bigger resolutions and screens. Better support for keyboards, multitasking, where you can have two things on the screen at one time. It's really not hard.
But do we
understand how they get there? How do you fix Windows though? How do you make something that is as huge as complex in Windows and make it simple and workable on these new device types? That's really hard.
I don't think you really. I'm not going to say you can't, but I don't think you can.
Right. I don't think you can either. Yeah. And the truth is you can't. And so the way that they did it was to make their new simple system and kind of attach it to the old one so we could bring people forward. It didn't seem to go too well.
But on the Chromebook
it's an interesting strategy. I mean, I give them credit for understanding the problem.
So let's take the Chromebook, right? Because it's a very simple UI. You really can't fiddle around with it too much. It's taking the tablet OS mentality and putting it in a laptop, which I understand. But the more you add to it and the more complicated it gets, and you start adding a file management system, and you start adding this,
right?
What's the pro in having that device over a Windows laptop? There's really no.
Here's the so.
I mean, people are buying it because of the hardware. Yeah, it's beautiful hardware, but you know what? I'm sure we're gonna get something nearly identical to what the hardware is like, as far as the aesthetics.
So it's, why do people keep buying Windows PCs, right? Because they had obtained some software library. Because the people around them were using Windows, they could exchange ideas and tips and tricks and software and documents. Document compatibility, all that kind of stuff. All my documents were created in Word. I know it's always going to work in Windows, that kind of thing. The reason someone might, in the future, continue using a tablet type system they're already using, but use it for productivity, is because that's the platform where they're doing that stuff. Now they have thousands of apps. They're familiar with it. They've evolved with it. I mean, I used to talk about how convoluted the iPod interface had gotten, and how weird it would be for someone to come in late in the game and try to understand what was going on. But if you had followed along from the beginning, the iPod wasn't that hard to use because each iteration of it was just an evolution. iOS is the same thing. And so as iOS evolves and they add, or Android, I think it's the same conversation, they add a native ability to run multiple apps at the same time on the screen, side-by-side kind of apps, I think would be the way to go on a mobile OS. Native keyboard support, I know they both support keyboards, but I mean integrated support. I've been talking for a long time about the notion of like an iPad Pro or an iPad, whatever, that has a keyboard clamshell kind of design, that takes over some of the functionality of the Mac OS. Introduces new integration types, interaction types. In the same way that they added multi-touch to Windows, add the ability to have a trackpad and a keyboard to iOS and have it work correctly in their apps and in Microsoft Office, whatever apps you want, in Photoshop, if that's what they want to do. Bring that stuff forward. 64-bit chip in the iPhone 5S means absolutely nothing today. But that enables much bigger memory systems in the future and enables much more powerful apps of all kinds, So I think it's going to happen. I really do.
Yeah, it's an interesting time. I mean, this crossover between the PC and the tablet, we still have not found out what the true answer is. We really...
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess, again, we were talking earlier about whether Microsoft did the right thing with Windows 8 and everything. I mean...
In concept, they did.
In context of their situation, they did what they had to do. I think they did the right thing for them. I think we could make this kind of general statement and say, is the better approach for this stuff to be separate? Yes. And I think that Microsoft will get there because that's how they have to do it. And people who don't understand the situation will make fun of them. Oh, Microsoft, you made this combination refrigerator and toaster, whatever the joke was. Yeah. We had a different issue than Apple did. People were actually buying our PCs, and so we had that world to deal with. I mean, you can always do something new when your other stuff isn't successful. It's very easy. But, taken out of context, is it better to have a phone that's a thing, a tablet that's a thing? And if you really need it, if you're today's construction worker type, but electronically, a PC too, yeah, maybe those things should be separate.
You could do that. Get a device in different ecosystems on each device.
Sure.
Get an Android tablet, get an iPhone, and get a Windows laptop. Now, there you go.
By the way, every single one of these companies sells all three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So before we run out of time, see what happens when we don't have ads? We could talk about one thing for 50 minutes and just...
It's too bad because I have a lot of Audible books I'd like to talk about.
I think they're back. Everybody's back next week, so no worries on that. But I wanted to talk to you about the Nest and Google acquiring this company for $3.2 billion. It is interesting that they want... I mean, this is just another device where they know your habits.
I know.
And this is just another one to add to their,
it's hard
list
not to be cynical about Google buying Nest, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the outcome will be from this, but I can tell you, it makes sense for them. Not only do they know what you're doing when you're out of your house, now they know what you're doing in the house. They know what kind of temperature you like to set your house in. They know what times you're home based on, you putting the heat up.
Mm-hmm. And by the way, I don't think there's any company I would trust more with that information than Google. So
yeah, sure,
no worries there.
I mean, are you even interested in this product?
The truth is, I've looked at Nest again and again over the past year. I am interested. These devices, like Apple products, seem expensive for what they are to me. I think the thermostat's like $250, and the smoke alarm is $100 or $150. They're nice looking in the way that Apple products often are, hardware products. I don't know. There's some of this stuff reminds them is like over complex technology. It's like we're immersed in technology, so let's make it technological. To kind of continue the car discussion. I look sometimes at pictures of older cars. Porsche 924s and 944s from the 1980s, BMWs, like 3 Series or 5 Series from the 1970s. And if you look at really good photographs of the insides of these vehicles, what you'll see is a complete lack of anything. It's like it's a simple dashboard, a couple of knobs, kind of just works. And I feel like I talked about this in the kind of the recap, what do you want to see this year? I want to become more mature. I want people to become more mature about our use of technology. We move toward like touchscreen things in cars, when in fact, when you're driving and can easily be distracted and kill somebody, having to touch a screen to interact with it is maybe not the best way to do things.
No, maybe not.
Some car makers, I don't know if Ford does this, but I know BMW and Mercedes do this. They have different systems where there's a knob that's by where your hand would be naturally, and you use that to control things like on a cursor kind of a thing on screen instead of touching the screen, because that is less distracting and is in fact a better way to select things. And so I think my worry for the Nest stuff is like that we've
overly complicating something that should be simple.
My smoke alarm is a piece of plastic. It probably costs $10. It uses a 9-volt battery, that you replace twice a year. And it warns me when there's smoke in the house. And you know what? It works. And is this Nest thing better than that?
Probably not.
Maybe. Right. Let's say it is. Is it $150 better than that? I don't know. This is like I have a sort of a natural trigger reaction to things that are like rich men toys.
And this is one of those.
Yeah, this is the smoke alarm for the people that got in line to buy the new Mac Pro and already own a Retina 15-inch $3,000 laptop and drive a Mercedes 7 Series or a BMW 7 Series, and I don't know. I don't know.
I mean, the Nest is pretty, right? It's a pretty device. It's a beautiful device, but I mean, I recently changed the thermostats in my house, a couple of years ago. I got, the normal digital one, and I'm able to set the timer if I want to, and it's good enough. I mean,
so we did the same thing. We got like one of those, at the time would have been considered like a smart thermostat. It was a pretty simple switch. At some time in the morning, the heat comes on. If the temperature is below a certain amount, And what that means is we don't have to set it ever. We just set it once and it just works. And that's the last time we thought about it. It just works. And I, you know, would something I can control with my smartphone be better? Yeah, maybe. Do I need it? No. You know, I don't know. So I like technology. I like good technology. I like attractive technology. I mean, if you go to the Nest website and look at these products, they're beautiful to look at. So yeah, I've thought about it a lot, but this has always been just outside of my acceptance, you know, point. There's something about it. I don't know.
Well, I mean, what are your opinions on home automation? Are you crazy about automating everything in your house?
No.
I feel like this is something that we fantasize about. A lot of us that are techies,
no.
We love this home automation stuff, but in reality, none of us actually do it. And they've been attempting to do the home automation stuff for years. I mean, do you remember the IBM stuff? What was it? The X something?
My father, until recently, he just retired, but he worked for a company called Lutron, which is like the second biggest lighting company in the United States. And they, a big part of my family lives down in Pennsylvania around where this company is. And a lot of them have all of these Lutron products all over the house, dimmers and switches and home automation systems and all this kind of crap. And this is a running joke. I mean, when we go to his house down there or my sister's house, they have a button that can turn off every single light in the house, which is hilarious because it happens by mistake all the time. It's impossible to know which of the switches. There's a control pad that has like 20 buttons in a grid, and you're always sitting there trying to figure. I want to use the toilet.
Yeah.
I just have a light in the bathroom. It's ridiculous. And so in my house we have switches. You know, you flick the switch, the light comes on. You flick the switch. You know, I mean, I think the most complicated lighting control we have in my entire house is like a two-way bulb. You know, I'm serious. And I just don't see the need. And they're always trying to sell me on this stuff. You got to do this. We have a system that you can press a button and like all of the shutters in the window will turn to a certain angle and they'll come on or down or whatever they do. And it's like, you look at this thing and it's like, yeah, I walk up and I swivel this stick on my shutters and they close.
Nikki in our chat room says, aren't dimmers rich guy tech from 1988?
So awful.
But like, I like dimmers.
Oh, I hate that stuff.
Why? Like a dimmer switch? You could just dim it?
Actually, I lied. I'm sorry. You know, like a little. Actually, you can kind of see it on the wall behind me. See that white switch there on the wall? Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Right there.
So you see the white switch at one point. It's on and off. That's how that works. Right?
Okay.
In my kitchen.
Is that how they work?
That's how it works. On and off. Up, down. It's like the Stephen Wright joke. You know, I have the switch in my house. It doesn't do anything. And every once in a while, I flick it. And finally, one day, a woman called me from Germany, and she said, "Stop doing that." So, in my kitchen, I have one of those switches, and there's this teeny little slider. So it goes up
I have
and
the
down,
same thing.
Right? That's a dimmer.
Yeah.
That thing has only dimmed by mistake. I walk in the kitchen and I flick the light on and I'm like, wow, it's kind of dark in here. And it's that stupid switch has mistakenly been bumped and it went down a little bit. I hate those things.
You see, I have the same thing. But I mean, but it kind of makes sense. Like, why don't we have dimmers in every room, right? I mean, talk about it. That's total control. I mean, that's why. But I mean, like the one I have in my dining room, it locks, so you can't really do that.
Okay.
But like, it's a simple thing, right? We want control of our devices. We want home automation. Why aren't we just, first of all, let's take baby steps. Let's swap them all out and just add a dimmer. Now we get total control of how much lighting we want. It's one of these things that I don't think it's going to, I mean, the home of the future, yeah, maybe. But now I don't think this is a concern for a lot of people. I'll give you an example, okay? I got one of those kilowatt things.
Yeah, I did too.
I had a company send me a couple of them, and you could connect them to your outlet, and it'll measure, you know, you go online and you tell what the device is, and it'll measure how much electricity it's using. That makes a lot of sense if you're like in an apartment, maybe a one-bedroom apartment, you don't have a lot of stuff. I got power strips everywhere in this house.
Yeah, it's hard to use.
So how do you use it? You need an individual device for each product that you're connecting to it, at the end of the day, it's going to cost you thousands of dollars to determine what's using $5 more electricity than, last year.
Right.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, maybe in the future it's going to be built in. Technically, the best thing you could do is have like a smart grid.
It should be built in. Yep.
I remember that Google smart grid they were talking about when they wanted to get into the energy business, and they were going to have the smart grid where every breaker, you program what's connected to those, and it was like this crazy thing. It's not happening.
No.
I hate home automation.
Yeah, this stuff. Okay, so I mean, the Nest stuff looks good to me. It looks expensive. I don't know. I get why Google bought it. They obviously want the cachet of an Apple type designed product, which they've certainly lacked. I don't see how that helps them more broadly with Android or anything, but
I wonder, have they said why they bought it? I mean, obviously it's the information that they're gathering. Number two, it's the patents probably that this company has.
Oh, possibly. Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, to give $3.5 billion to a company that really, how many devices are they selling a year?
Maybe 1 million of these things if they're lucky.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
It's fascinating. Let's see. Put in your zip code. Why do I have to put in my zip code? What's your zip code?
It's like, I'm sorry, you don't live in Beverly Hills.
Let's see. I want to change it. Can I change it?
Do you have a version that looks good with wood paneling
of the Nest?
Yeah.
Can you do like the Motorola thing where you could like customize it?
Yeah. I want right. My house isn't that nice. Do you have a product that will match my needs?
My house was built in 1972. I need wood panel everywhere.
I notice you don't have yellow or light green. I don't know.
Listen, if you're building a brand new house, you could kind of put all this stuff automatically in there. I know someone that just built a brand new, beautiful home, and they automated everything. It's in there already. They have a kind of like a smart grid, and they did this whole entire thing with the house. My house was built in 1903. I have wires going who knows where. When this house was built, when my house was built, they had gas for the lights. They had gas fixtures. It's crazy. Yeah. I'm living in the Stone Age, Paul. I'm not ready for this.
My house is not ready for this. I can tell you that.
Yeah. All right, let's wrap it up. WinSupersite.com, all things Paul Thurrott. Also check him out every Thursday. Oh, Wednesday now. You're on Wednesdays. I forgot. Every Wednesday, 2 p.m. East on Twit for Windows Weekly. And your book, Paul. Tell us about the book.
I am writing a book. Well, I guess I'm writing a few books, but the big one is the Windows 8.1 book. Hoping to finish that in the next month if I can. But you can go to windows81book.com, follow along. We update it every week. I think it's up to about 375 pages, but still have several chapters to complete, before we publish the first big version of it. But yeah, it's kind of an ongoing concern.
Has this kind of all this Windows 9 information, has it kind of changed your projected outlook as far as what you're writing and when you're writing it?
The goal has always been to get these things done and do it for a variety of products and then update them as new versions come out. And so, over time, Windows 8.1 update 1 will come up, and we'll have an update for that, that will address that. So, hopefully Windows 9 will be a complete change or whatever. But no, I mean, we'll just we'll do a Windows 9 version. Windows 9 would trigger, I guess, a new book at that point. But
I'm actually writing a book about home automation.
Nice.
And how it's ruining our lives.
Look into the Lutron stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah.
If you like a bank of buttons that looks like something out of Star Wars, you're going to love it.
Oh, the Lutron dimmer? Is that it?
Yeah.
Let me see this thing.
Lutron, everything. They have everything.
Lutron. What am I looking for? I'm on their website.
I don't know. I don't use this stuff. I don't like it. It's not their fault. I don't mean like Lutron stuff is. I mean, Lutron stuff is probably fantastic. I'm just. I mean, it's probably residential. Let's see. I don't know. I don't look at this stuff. They have all kinds of stuff.
I remember when I got my
stuff. If you could like Home Depot or Lowe's.
When I got my IBM Aptiva in like '96, it came with all this crazy IBM home automation stuff. Like I remember when we got it, it was like $500 worth for free, and it came with like 1,000 buttons, 1,000 little adapters. I never used it. I mean, the thing was like a disaster, but I know some people love it. So maybe I'm missing something. Who knows? If you miss any portion of the show, guys, you can go to our website, gfknetwork.com. We're working on a new website probably early next month, probably maybe in 2 weeks. We'll have the new website up and running. And, of course, we're going to rely on you guys to tell us what's working and what's not, because I'm sure we're probably going to miss something. Also, we're on iTunes. We're on Windows Phone. We're everywhere podcasts are available. You can subscribe to us. The video RSS is there. The audio RSS is there. We have a lot of stuff going this year. A lot of stuff's happening. We're going to be adding a bunch of shows in the next couple of months, so stay tuned. You can follow me on Twitter at Andrew Zarian. You can follow Paul at The Ryan. Of course, the GFK Network is on Twitter as well. And we'll see you all next week on What the Tech. Good night, everybody.